Hi, I'm Brendan with the Leaderboard, and today we're taking another look at Digital Extreme's free-to-play darling, Warframe. So many players reached out to us with additional facts, updates, and information that we just had to go back for a second round. We have to give YouTuber Kategari a shout out for helping us bring you the new and improved 107 facts about Warframe. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. Warframe is a free-to-play third-person action game with an emphasis on cooperative play. It was developed for PC, Xbox One, and PlayStation 4. Sorry, Nintendo fans. The Warframe Nexus app is available in Google Play and iTunes for mobile users. It allows players to check available missions, view their arsenal, build and claim items from the foundry, deploy or collect extractors, interact with their companion, or get notified when new events appear. Warframe's story is a convoluted work in progress, with in-game history revealed bit by bit over different missions, releases, and codex entries. Generally speaking, the game takes place centuries after a brutal war between ancient civilization, the Orokin, and the machine, possibly alien race, the Sentients. The roots of the name Orokin are oro, the Spanish and Latin word for gold, and kin, meaning family or relations. Put together, gold relatives symbolizes the high rank of the noble and rare Orokin bloodline. The Warframe world is divided into factions made up of corrupt clones, merchants, monsters, and machines. These are the Grineer, the Corpus, the Infested, and the Sentients. Players control the mysterious faction known as the Tenno. In 1993, Digital Extreme Studio partnered with Epic Games to create the one-player shooter series Unreal. Working on Unreal Tournament sparked the idea for Digital Extreme's passion project, an attempt to merge intense multiplayer shooter action with a larger scope of fully fleshed out characters. In a 2000 interview with Canadian magazine GG8, creative director James SCHMALZ described his initial vision for the setting of Warframe as a paranoid universe where all players had a bounty on their heads. The idea that led to Warframe started back in 2000 with a project called Dark Sector. The sci-fi epic shooter concept was considered too ambitious by publishers, and the Dark Sector, eventually released in 2008, was an entirely different game. But Digital Extremes never abandoned their initial concept and kept trying to find ways to make it work. They even spent several months reworking it as an Xbox Live Arcade game. In 2004, a new generation of hardware had Digital Extreme pitching a new version of Dark Sector, described by creative director Steve Sinclair as, quote, a single-player console game that was super ultra hardcore sci-fi, Canadian manga style, with energy tentacles coming out of people's heads and giant robots that had organic limbs. Whatever Canadian manga style is, publishers weren't buying it. Sinclair spent a year pitching to studios, with almost everyone suggesting they drop the sci-fi angle. A Sony executive even asked if Sinclair could set the game during the Civil War. Could you imagine? In 2012, Sinclair and Digital Extreme CEO James SCHMALZ were exploring free-to-play games, wondering if they could do something with the format. Their original Dark Sector concept fit the bill perfectly. The team gave the idea a new name and a new life: Warframe. Warframe and Dark Sector are two completely different games, and Sinclair's made it clear that Dark Sector is not a canon Warframe prequel, but the two games are definitely linked. One of the first three Warframes introduced in the game is Excalibur. In 2014, during Warframe's one-year anniversary, a special Excalibur proto-armor skin was released that was nearly identical to the suit worn by Dark Sector's protagonist, Hayden Tenno. In Dark Sector, Tenno contracts the technocyte virus during the Cold War and comes across a prototype armor, or proto-armor, see the connection there, that helps enhance his abilities. The mysterious Tenno was also the name inspiration for the mysterious Tenno race of Warframe, both of which use enhancing armor. Tenocyte virus created the Infested. While Warframe was on hiatus, Digital Extremes did work for hire on other projects like BioShock and Darkness 2. However, they weren't content working under other large companies. While Warframe wasn't their first independent project, it was their first successful project as an independent company. Warframe's success enabled them to work on future projects without any interference from what Sinclair called, quote, the publisher beast. On a deadline to present their concept at the Game Developers Conference, Digital Extremes made its first Warframe prototype game model in a month. The game's development phase officially started in February of 2012. There were only 8 developers at that time, and the game was dubbed Project Lotus. The team eventually grew to more than 170 workers. Not a single publisher was interested in Warframe, and many told Sinclair that the game was doomed to fail because the dev team spent too much time on graphics, and they'd never be able to maintain the quality. Other free developers warned Digital Extremes, echoing those publishers' concerns. Many of their fellow developers said that too much of a focus on graphics and not enough focus on updates would lead to their demise. Digital Extremes listened, and it was thanks to this advice that Warframe is one of the most updated and popular free-to-play games. Sinclair realized that if they wanted to make Warframe, it would have to be on the company's own dime. That also meant that they wouldn't be beholden to a publisher, which worked out. Digital Extremes wanted to be solely responsible for the game's success or failure. In 2013, Warframe went ahead without any outside funding. As the game went into beta testing that March, Digital Extremes had to lay off 48 employees. Luckily, after Warframe caught on with players, some of these employees were rehired. The only hesitation Sinclair had was actually agreeing to go free to play, since he knew the studio only had one shot to win fans over with the core game and bring in new players with updates. Community producer Rebecca Ford felt that from the get-go, the free-to-play player versus environment game structure let players decide how they wanted to play and not feel limited in how they approach their objectives. Player versus environment structures aren't really about winning, they're about goals. For some players, that could mean collecting every item available, but for others, it could just be a relaxing Space Ninja killing spree after a hard day's work. The team realized it was important to allow players to choose how they wanted to reach their goals, by spending time on missions or spending money to get plat and bundles, in-game items made during the height of Orokin technology. For a lot of players, the ultimate goal is fashion frame, which means looking fly and flashy with deluxe skins, armor, and components. As Rebecca put it, players have to balance two factors. 1, how fast do you want to complete things? 2, how cool do you want to look completing things? If you don't want to spend time getting blueprints, gathering prime items, and waiting to construct things in the foundry, players can use in-game currency called platinum to speed things along. Platinum, of course, can be bought with real-world cash. Digital Extreme CEO James SCHMALZ knew it would be a challenge to go free to play, and that the biggest difference in game production would be building the game from update to update based on reactions and feedback. Dennis Crossan, the lead character artist, admitted that the free-to-play structure meant that the studio had to adjust their development cycle. Normally, they would release a game and that was that. But for some Warframe characters, the team creates a character, develops them, and releases them into the wild. Then, after feedback, they make adjustments and fixes. Technical animator Bob Piscopo said he embraced the cycle because something he worked on at the beginning of the week could be rolled out by the end of the week. He could check on the forums and listen to feedback on the team's work, be it positive or negative. Rebecca Ford felt that Warframe was a sleeper hit with the community. While it consistently made the top-played games in Steam, the game wasn't really well known beyond the devoted community already involved with the game. When Warframe launched in 2013, it had over 3 million registered users signed up, and that was before the PS4 launch. Because Warframe ended up being such a hit, Digital Extremes was able to turn down projects from other studios. They wanted to focus on bringing Warframe to consoles before they tried anything new. Sinclair felt that the launch of Warframe on PS4 was one of the first times console players fully embraced the free-to-play model. He knew that games were expensive, and that Warframe could be something entirely new for console players, where they wouldn't have to spend a dime to get access. Before the studio agreed to launch Warframe on the PS4, they asked Sony to agree to a few things. They had to self-publish the game, Sony had to support the free-to-play model, and they needed to release updates as frequently as possible. In fact, Sony actually approached Digital Extremes about bringing Warframe to PS4 and promised them full creative control. The only thing Sony had to do was pass the patches and updates through certification. When it came time to actually develop Warframe for the PS4, Sinclair noted that it was a painless process. The only hurdle the team had to do was making sure to lock it at 1080p and have it run at 60 frames per second. Unfortunately, there's no current cross-platform compatibility between PC and platform players. It has little to do with technical problems. When porting the game to the PS4, Sinclair actually expressed surprise cross-platform compatibility was a non-issue for Sony. The main holdup seems to be legal and business reasons. Warframe was originally meant to be a single-player game. The idea to make it an MMO-like game with co-op came from its story. The dev team believed that the best stories were about the players themselves and how they work together. A lot of the story elements, mainly in the Warframes themselves, used to rely on codex entries within the game. When developers decided to make cinematic trailers for all of the Prime Warframes, they noticed that more players seemed to watch and enjoy the trailers. Codex scanners enable players to scan and obtain data on enemies. The Codex is an encyclopedia of the lore and all the characters encountered. Second Dream spoiler alert. Warframe's story is currently established along two simultaneous storylines, the Warframes and the Tenno. The Tenno storyline is a more linear, fleshed out work in progress, while the Warframe story is more cryptic for now. Warframe takes the player all across the solar system. The types of missions depend on the planet, with goals ranging from survival to capture to sabotage, and so on. The second dream was the game's first cinematic quest, with detailed lore that significantly shifted the Warframe world. A year later, The War Within, another quest aimed to repeat the evolution. While the team wants to continue moving towards involved cinematic quests, they take a lot of time and effort to make, and ultimately player response is what drives Warframe's evolution. The Corpus ship tile set was the first and only layout available in October 2012. Now Warframe offers 22 unique tile sets, used to create procedurally generated mission maps for players to run around in. Players can build clans made up of other players. Clans can have as few as 1 or 2 members. Together, a clan can build obstacle courses, collect items, and compete in special events, and become a part of the clan leaderboards. PC clans cannot interact with or be part of console clans, unfortunately. Steve Sinclair plans to extend the dojo obstacle course so that players can customize it the way they want. Players will be able to place hazards, start and stop triggers, timing gates, target dummies, and other additions to their dojo. Digital Extremes experimented with sandbox play that enabled players to explore their own side missions and compensates for the lack of updates for raid missions. At launch, there were only 8 Warframes available: Excalibur, Mag, Vault, Loki, Ash, Ember, Rhino, and Trinity. Since launch, there have been over 44 Warframes added within the game, including Prime Warframes. At this rate, there is no slowing Digital Extremes down. In terms of major updates, Warframe has seen over 20 since launch, and most major updates have included a new Warframe. While a bunch of Warframes have been released since launch, developers always made sure each one had a purpose and felt balanced rather than rushing them out. Sinclair felt that combat should be free form, and each new Warframe should allow players to expand upon and improvise their strategies. Many of the voices in Warframe were not provided by professional voice actors. George Spano thought it was more convenient to modulate the voices of studio employees. Level designer Cole Crosby is the voice of Vor, and community manager Rebecca Ford is the voice of Lotus. Megan Everett is the community coordinator who often streams on Warframe primetime broadcasts. She also voices the cries of the Valkyrs. Musical composer Keith Power, who is also known for his work on Avengers: Age of Ultron, Criminal, and Hawaii Five-0, collaborated with Warframe's audio director George Spano to create Warframe's digital soundtracks. There are 24 tracks in the album, which was released in July of 2017. Though Warframe is primarily a shooter game, it's loaded with a variety of melee weapons. In a Forbes article, writer Paul Tassi praises the availability of swords, machetes, katanas, fist weapons, daggers, hammers, axes, and other weapons available in the 3rd slot of Warframe, an option that isn't prevalent in other popular shooter games like Destiny. Warframe also has an extensive modding system for each weapon and Warframe. Almost every type of customization for a weapon or armor set is possible within Warframe and could meet every type of player's needs. All of Warframe's weapons are unique despite the fact that there are hundreds upon hundreds within the game. Though most Prime weapons have the same feel as their non-Prime counterparts, many weapons in the game have their own unique look and feel. In a 2016 interview, studio head Shelton Carter said that if he had foreseen Warframe's success, the team would have worked on improving the weaponry's damage system. Their main concern is not to lose players who have invested in mods and gear to create such weapons. However, Damage 2.5 and 3 are currently in development. Creative director Steve Sinclair has stated that he finds the Grineer Bombard to be amongst the most difficult enemies in the game to kill, due to its thick armor and rockets, and because armor scaling continues to be problematic. Fast frame facts time! There's a secret minigame available in the PC version of Warframe. If you enter the first name Flappy and the password Bird, you can play a version of Flappy Bird called Happy Zephyr. You can also access the game by equipping the Zephyr in Arsenal and picking the Z loadout under appearance. Another Easter egg is Wormius, a side-scrolling minigame players can access by selecting and equipping Worm and then clicking W at the top of the screen. There are Orokin cat statues hidden throughout the game in hard-to-reach places. Originally low-res unscannable Easter eggs put there by the graphics team, fans dubbed them Orokitties. After Update 17, the statues, now officially called Kuria, became scannable. Scan them all and you'll unlock an epic about the origin of the Twin Queens. Warframe invented several in-game alphabets, including Roman numeral-style writing for the Corpus and a barcode-style alphabet for the Grineer. The only alphabet that has been officially explained as of January 2018 is the Tenno Orokin script, also known as the Tennobet. A calligraphic syllable replacement alphabet, fans have noticed several weapons resemble the elegant script. For now, it's just a coincidence. Plains of Eidolon, introduced in October 2017, is one of Warframe's most ambitious expansions yet. The content includes a bevy of new things, such as a civilian culture, wide open landscapes with day and night cycles, and even spearfishing. Fishing started off as a goof. With a large, beautiful lake as part of the landscape, employees kept jokingly suggesting they should add fishing to the game. Sinclair actually liked the idea, but thought a rod and reel, quote, wasn't ninja enough. The result? Spearfishing. It turned out to be an activity that appealed to late-game veterans. The Eidolons are massive monsters inspired by the kaiju giants in Japanese anime. Rebecca Ford says that developers were also influenced by the kaiju from the Guillermo del Toro film Pacific Rim. The nighttime cycle on the Plains of Eidolon was targeted towards veteran players. Rebecca Ford revealed that the Eidolons, monsters sent by the sentients, can only be defeated if the war within has been completed. The player must switch between the warrior operator mode, obtainable only after the quests are completed, and the Warframe mode to exploit their weaknesses. Eidolon is a term of Greek origin which means phantom or ghost. The plains themselves are meant to hint at what was there before, which resonates with the Greek meaning. Prior to this update, Warframe was comprised of sets of missions of varying complexity. The levels themselves were linear, but randomly generated in order to keep things fresh. For Plains of Eidolon, Digital Extreme changed how Warframe generated levels. The team had thought about making Plains of Eidolon procedurally generated as well, but felt that it wouldn't work in an open world. So the team had to rework their entire engine to make sure that everything felt authentic and unique within the plains. Unlike other mission modes, Eidolon's map isn't procedurally generated, but it's a massive static map with unique geography. While the map itself is not procedurally generated, the encounters within the plains are. The team wanted the world itself to always feel familiar, but for each player's experience to be different. The team wanted the world to feel open from early in Plains of Eidolon's development. Sinclair noted that prior to the plains, the majority of Warframe gameplay felt like a rat in a maze. Aside from the wildlife, Plains introduced an all-new civilization as well. Prior to the expansion, Sinclair noted that the only people on the other side of the gun were enemies, and he wanted to add an actual colony to interact and trade with. Community coordinator Megan Everett said that the development of Plains went pretty quickly considering how massive it is. She noted that the idea for the Plains began during the Q1 stage of 2017, and the team worked non-stop leading up to the July 2017 demo reveal. The team was so dedicated to making Plains of Eidolon that Everett and other members would catch themselves yelling, "Pencils down!" to catch a break. They made changes to the demo just hours before the big reveal at TennoCon. Some of those changes didn't go as smoothly as the team hoped. The last-minute updates also created a bug where if the player died, the entire demo would crash. That's why if you listen carefully, you can hear Steve Sinclair yelling, "Don't die, Rebecca!" to community producer Rebecca Ford, who was playing the demo. Monster Hunter was a major source of inspiration for the Sentients. Sinclair wanted to capture the feel of Monster Hunter's multi-stage boss fights. The Sentients were added within the plains to address the limited endgame content available in Warframe. The plains themselves are an entirely new playground for new content. The Helios blueprint can be bought to build the Helios Sentinel, or the Helios Sentinel can be bought in the marketplace, to automatically scan enemies which might be harder to target. It is the first and currently only Corpus Sentinel. During October 2012 and September 2014, there were over 279 Warframe hotfixes and updates. That's more than 3 per week on average, though the team took a break around the holidays. Extended periods of time without updates or hotfixes have proven to be disastrous for the game. In 2014, a major issue arose with the Eyes of Blight in between update 15.8.1 and 15.9, in which all the leaderboards were erased. In November 2013, when Warframe launched on PlayStation 4, Sony's system prevented Digital Extremes from updating and hotfixing as quickly as they would have. A year later, when launching with the Xbox One, they ensured their control over updates by being cautious in the certification process. On average, the developers release a new Warframe once every 3 months. The exceptions are Prime variants and Frost and Nyx, which took about 100 days to launch in Update 6. The developers have made a point to feature a new weapon for Warframe every 14 days. They've made good on this promise for the past 4 years and counting. Developers have also made many sub-updates, including Spectres of the Rail in 2016. In Update 15, an entirely new mechanic called Arcwing was introduced, which added mobility to your Warframe, giving you the ability to fly. Originally intended for space, Arcwings also allow for atmospheric and underwater movement. The development process for the Arcwing was designed to stay true to the already established modes within Warframe. The only difference was that you'd be fighting in space, which made everything 100 times cooler. Movement with the Arcwing was meant to feel familiar as well. Sinclair never wanted players to feel as though they'd lost their muscle memory. The majority of movement control stayed the same, but the movement itself was adjusted for an additional dimension. The team experimented with some of the Arcwing movement before implementation, and it's a good thing they did. In testing, the ability to move up in any direction felt, quote, vomit-inducing, and made players feel disoriented in combat. The team went with a predetermined up motion as the default instead. If they want, players can turn the ability called experimental flight on and off in their control settings. You might want to take some Dramamine first, though. Parkour 2.0, introduced with Update 17, allowed for an entirely new set of movement within the game. There were so many added techniques that an all-new tutorial was added within the game to teach players the new moves. As early as 2008, Digital Extreme studio head Sheldon Carter worked with comic writer Matt Hawkins to create comic art for Dark Sector and The Darkness 2. Warframe's lore can be pretty confusing, and Carter thought publishing it in comic form would be easier to follow. In October of 2017, a comic based on the video game was released. Comic writers Hawkins and Ryan Cady collaborated to, quote, explain the lore in a way that will satisfy longtime fans, as well as convert readers into players. They worked closely with Steve Sinclair to remain faithful to Warframe's original story. The first issue's cover was actually drawn by a fan of Warframe, Kevin Glint, who has done a massive amount of fan art for the Warframe series. The comic's initial 5 issues are planned to be collected and released together in April of 2018. When asked if there would be a hidden surprise inside of the collection, writer Ryan Cady revealed that there'd be a platinum coupon inside the first issue. Warframe has a channel on Twitch that features dev streams hosted by Rebecca, as well as console streams. The team discusses all things Warframe, from skins to upcoming features. If you missed an episode, you can check it out on their YouTube channel, Play Warframe. It has over 100 episodes so far, plus primetime broadcasts. In 2015, Warframe received an award for the MMO Reader's Choice Awards for Best Community, Best Expansion, and Favorite Action MMO. By Warframe's 4th year, the game's population grew to over 30 million registered users, with 93,466 years worth of playtime invested. Warframe's player population increased by 35% in 2016 alone. In October of 2016, a couple by the names of Needy and Eli from the Xbox One clan Midgard held their wedding within Warframe, as many of their loved ones were players they met in-game. This wedding was even approved and hosted by Digital Extremes, with Rebecca in her special Lotus skin. Symbiote Studios bought the rights to manufacture Warframe action figures. Symbiote Studios CEO Jeff Reiter predicts Warframe is the future of gaming. Mag, Nyx, Rhino, and Excalibur action figures can be purchased for $80 through the Warframe main site's online store. In October 2017, Digital Extremes announced that they were stopping development of their next anticipated game, The Amazing Internals. The team says the decision did not come lightly, but the closed beta testing just wasn't attracting enough players to make it worthwhile. Fortunately, none of the team will lose their jobs, as the entire dev team has been transferred back to work on Warframe. Thanks for watching 107 Facts About Warframe Redux. I'm Brendan with the Leaderboard. Comment below to let us know what you thought. Don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of the notification squad. And if you like getting more from your game, subscribe to the Leaderboard, your home for video game fact.